would like to introduce you to the panel. Mr. Muthusamy Chelliah, Mr. Balaraman Ravindran, Mr. Partha Talukdar, and this session will be moderated by Mr. Pankaj Mishra. Mr. Pankaj, the stage is all yours.
AI in India on the ground. We thought we will hopefully put together a conversation that puts together a kind of a status report when it comes to AI in India, and also discusses some of the challenges that we face, apart from some of the grand problems that could be potentially solved. Now, what we will do is we will ask each one of them to share their agenda-setting context, and then we can get into specific questions. So if I could start with you, Partha. Tell us a bit about yourself. I think before this panel, someone just mentioned that one of the challenges is academicians or researchers becoming entrepreneurs. Partha is a myth buster, so far as that goes. He's an entrepreneur, right?
Okay, all right. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Partha from Indian Institute of Science, and as Pankaj was mentioning, I'm also co-founder, actually, of an enterprise AI company called Kinome, which stands for Knowledge Genome. So we're trying to help enterprises make sense of unstructured data. So in terms of AI research in India, I think there is kind of like high quality work happening in the country, but it's mostly in pockets. And given the size of the country, we definitely need to, I think, kind of scale that up. I think there is lots of appetite among students to kind of get deeper experience and expertise in these kind of areas. And one of the ways maybe how we could orchestrate that could be through grand challenge problems. So, yeah. Okay. So a lot of the technologies that we celebrate today kind of find their origins in grand challenge problems, primarily in US, driven by military applications. I think in this country also, we can formulate those kind of challenges, be it in healthcare, education, not just hackathons, which is over the weekend, but things that run over a semester or a year, or you kind of put some performance targets. But at the same time, I think it's also important that the stakeholders who are going to be consumers of those kind of technologies and progresses that happen also have a buy-in into those kind of challenges. So, yeah, so those are some of my initial thoughts.
Okay. Professor Ravi, if I can come to you, we spent a lot of time in IIT Madras discussing this topic. How would you set the context when it comes to AI in India, for India, whatever you make of it?
Okay. So I'm Ravindran, and I'm a faculty at IIT Madras. And so there's a couple of things here from the title of the panel, right? So we're talking about world-class AI solutions from India. That's what I see in the prompt down there. But though the topic that we were given was solving problems for India. And so even if you look at many of the high-tech startups, right, that are coming out of India, they are looking to solve problems of the Western world. Right? There are many startups that I am consulting with, and quite often you find that the large fraction, if not their entire clientele, is from the US, right? So there is a reason for that, right? So even though we talk about significant problems that are there in India, we don't still have a market that can sustain high-tech research and product development in India. Of course, Chelliah is going to jump in and say, hey, we solve India problems. I agree, Flipkart is one of the few companies which has largely clientele in India, but many of the startups, high-tech startups that we see, seem to focus more on that. So there seems to be a problem in sense of the market in India being able to drive high-tech AI research in India. So that is one issue that we need to address. And apart from that, quite often, right, I find that there's nothing like technology AI for India, right? So if you're able to solve AI problem in India, you have solved it for the world. Right? So it's not like the technology that is focused only on India. So the idea would be to develop technology, perhaps focused on the Indian market, but then being able to solve the world's problem with it. But we seem to be going the other way. We solve world's problem and hope that it will trickle down to solving India's problem. And that's something that we should look at addressing.
So before we got here, we were having a very animated discussion. I actually wished all of you could join us in the bar we were sitting. And we are quite sober here. And, just to come to you, Muthusamy, and one of the things we were discussing is,
We are all just drunk on AI. So.
is this whole industry academia thing that we were discussing a while ago. Now, what context do you see when it comes to AI in India? Because as a journalist, I've heard both the sides blaming each other for lack of it or challenges with it.
Can I get my... Thank you. Yeah, so I am M. Chelliah, so that makes it easier to call my name. I'm Chelliah. I work for Flipkart. I manage industry academia collaboration. Sorry, Ravi, I kind of influenced the topic with my slides. The real topic was AI solutions for India. But my perspective is to build AI solutions for India. Probably we need to look in the mirror. And are we really building world-class solutions from India? Of course, we have people like Partha and Ravi who are really helping that agenda. And is it getting translated in practice? That's probably the billion-dollar question. And I would like to claim, thanks to my employer, like Flipkart is really there. But maybe Ravi has a point. We have solved the problem, or we try to solve the problem for the world, and then look at customers here also. So I don't want to distinguish between India and the globe. Rather, do world-class research in AI. So at least for me, I am not a professor. I don't know how much you can read the fine print in the title and the slides. You probably need to demystify AI, deep learning, data science, machine learning. If you break it into small parts, then maybe we can talk about it. Where is information retrieval? Where is natural language processing? Where is data mining? So the reason I'm coming into that is I work a lot with academia. And one question people across the industry ask is, how do I know whom to go talk with? Who is the expert? If you just have one broad area called AI, there are enough people whom you can go partner with. But if you can break it into subparts, maybe it's easier to identify whom you want to work with. So how do you go find the right people? Do you go to their websites? Do you look at, or like it's by word of mouth? Maybe, I don't know how many in the industry today track academic research conferences. Maybe it's like a different world out there. And at least if you have the habit of skimming through or scouting for research papers, probably it's easier to identify experts, right? There's no one AI conference. Maybe there's a machine learning conference. There's a bunch of information retrieval conferences. It's good to at least be up on those things if you really want to do cutting-edge AI work. This is a bit crowded. I don't even want to run it as a quiz. If you can spot at least two of the panelists' name in these slides, that will be great. Without any further suspense, so at least I consider Partha as an NLP researcher and Ravi as a machine learning researcher. And of course, Partha is exploring ML applications, vice versa with Ravi also. At least if you can somehow track and archive or document a list of experts across the globe based on papers they publish in these top conferences, you know where to go. Does that mean I'm just advocating our paper tigers? People should all just go look for papers? Maybe not. At least in one area, at least online shopping. It's broader than Flipkart. Any of these areas like information retrieval, natural language processing, everything has a machine learning or deep learning application. Something as mundane as how do I find the intent behind a query? How do I order the rank the reviews for a particular product? Each of these look like a customer problem or a business challenge, but there are deep AI solutions behind that. And maybe we have only crossed 20% of the way in solving these problems. And solving these problems is very important, either in parallel solving for Indian customers or even before that as a prereq. So that's my position. To solve for India, we need to really get world-class solving this. Now, all this is academic exercise, or there are some proof points. Maybe some of you are aware, there have been good exits in the past year, especially Flipkart itself, we had a couple of acquisitions. Walmart itself has made a majority stake investment in us, and they have also invested in companies like Cosmix, Jet.com, and there are a few other up-and-coming startups. A lot of them have deep technology underneath, but have they really leveraged AI to the hilt? Only time can answer. So what does this all mean to me? I don't want to be preaching here, but at least from my perspective, based on the experience I have in this field, I will never blame academics, and I don't want academics to blame industry also. There is a way to shake hands and get good work done. I have collaborated with Ravi, I have collaborated with Partha. The key message, industry probably should be aware of research culture. It's not somebody's job to do this for us. We need to at least walk a bit, maybe 30%, 40% of the way to engage academics. And my request to academics also, and Ravi and Partha confirmed and clarified that that's the intent. There is a lot of hands-on, kind of prototype building kind of work happens with students. They're getting trained for that. This should continue. So those are some insights I want to share. Summary, to really do AI for India, we need to do world-class AI from India.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Now, there are two other issues that are connected here, and one of the things is the AI research itself and the grand challenges or the clusters of problem if you were to look at through India lens. So, Ravi, you want to talk about that because you also work with a lot of those companies and in industry. So how would you classify some of those big problem areas or grand challenges?
So, I mean, I was recently at an event that one of the plenary speaker was talking about how the grand challenge problems that we should look for are challenges in India, right? So things like healthcare and agriculture, and those are domains which we should think of as grand challenge problems. And there are enough scope in these domains for companies to pitch in, but more importantly, you'll have the government backing too. If you're going to look at solving grand challenge problems that have significant impact for India, not necessarily for a specific industry segment, right? So if you just, let's say, take something like healthcare, right? So there is, I mean, you have, apart from, the actual clinical diagnosis and healthcare part of it, you have a lot of things in terms of logistics and inventory management and hospital management and resource allocation, distribution, and a variety of the mobility solutions and so on and so forth. A lot of ancillary problems come in. So even if you take a simple thing about taking one district and trying to improve healthcare there, right? So there are significant challenges that you will have to address, right? And a lot of these, some of these would not be completely addressed just by AI. In fact, a lot of India's problems don't need AI. They just need I to address in the first place. But then on top of it, right, to make things more, more effective, right, and to kind of be a force multiplier, then you need to have AI sit on top of it. And these are some challenges. In fact, quite often the scale at which you'll have to look at these challenges, right? They might not, and also the resource constraint under which we'll have to solve these problems, right? Might not be something that the world would have to look at. Right? And maybe somebody eventually, once they have solved all their problems, will come in and take over our market as well. I mean, so you know who I'm talking about. But so we have to be. Maybe we should solve problems before before the others try and solve our problems for us. Right? So those are the kinds of grand challenge problems I think would have a lot of traction. You could have NASSCOM get behind it. You could have the government get behind it, and of course academicians get behind it. So. I think that's yet another big stumbling block, but I'll come to that next round. But now I'll let others talk about the grand challenge.
So, I mean, you all should definitely read a profile we did on Professor Ravindran at Factor Daily. And the other point I was coming to is the research itself. And that's where, I wanted to, is entrepreneurship the answer? Because a lot of time you see good research teams working in the area of AI or even machine learning and so on in academia. Now, are we seeing a new breed of teams who are becoming entrepreneurial? Are we seeing more startups that are coming out of academia? Because I'm trying to understand if entrepreneurship kind of answers or solves this problem.
So I think entrepreneurship is one of the many channels, right? But I think it's closer. Thanks, Ravi. But I think it's important to have the continuous dialogue between academia and industry. And that interaction could happen at like many different levels, right? For example, in my group, we kind of like right now interact with like 7 or 8 different industries from like, very diverse kind of like backgrounds all the way from companies like Cargill, which are doing like, in like food and agriculture, all the way to companies like Shell, which is like in oil and natural gas, right? So, and like through many of those interactions, it has like, influenced our research in a positive way in that like, we have opened up new research directions, which you would have not thought about if we had not interacted with those companies, right? So jointly defining research problems and working on them could be kind of like, one of the other opportunities, internships for students, because it gives them a new perspective that's not there in the academia. But also it helps in like improving the students' training also in a different way. While like, now you think about like, how to maybe deploy your algorithm, like, scalability of those. So many of those things you'd not kind of like think about if you're not building systems with like, that there's an end user at the end of the line who are going to kind of like consume that, right?
Chelliah, if I could bring you in, one of the problems here is that, research teams have really long agendas, right? And you were talking about here and now problems. Also, when you are a startup, you're looking to solve problems of today, right? And you were talking about one of the debates we were having before is the problem of not looking at here and now problems, right? What do you make of this?
So I am certainly with my academic partners in that India has many grand challenges, and maybe the ventures or the enterprises they start, maybe some other companies they may work with, probably will address that. If I take a vertical like online shopping, and of course there are global issues, and also there are issues which are specific to India. When the company comes to a certain size, probably we may not call them as grand challenge. We may call it moonshot, but it, despite the language, here and now means maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe 3 to 5 years. We need to be able to break it into pieces and kind of see some tangible output. It doesn't mean that academics will solve my day-to-day problem or bring my code to a certain point, but good proof of concepts. And there are tons of problems like that, right? And I just gave the example, like you just take product recommendation and something like price-sensitive recommendation. It's a very hard problem. And it means, I'm not sure that it fits into the grand challenge realm or not. And it is a global problem. And a good retailer who solves that, probably there are lots of money to be made and even pass the savings to the end customers. So those are the kind of challenges I would want to focus my partnerships in. And I think it also kind of ties with what Partha is talking about, student projects, internships, and it goes beyond that, maybe consulting with the faculty members, even having them on board inside the company, so they get the experience of real customers on scale, and maybe it will add to the broader agenda of solving for India eventually, right?
Before you start another question, I have a few more things to add to the earlier points, right? So I completely agree with Partha on the value of collaborating with the industry, but your question was, is entrepreneurship the answer, right? I would say yes, because if you are going to look at things that are going to disrupt the way things are being done now, so if I'm going to work on AI systems or any kind of technology solution that's going to cause a significant disruption, and it's going to be very hard doing it in the context of a bigger industry, right? So startups are the way to go, right? Maybe, see, so quite often, big enterprises look at these startups as way of, testing out multiple things. So as soon as they see a startup that works, they like to buy it, right? If they had asked them to trial the technology inside their organization, they wouldn't have been willing to do it, right? So entrepreneurship is a way of exploring. So I work primarily in reinforcement learning. So for us, exploration is everything, right? That's one thing. So in IIT Madras, we kind of realized that, and we have enabled a very good ecosystem for doing this kind of startup explorations, including the fact that the students can take a semester off, right? So go work on their startups and come back, and they can delay their graduation by a year. right? So they can say that, oh, I'm not going to, I'll still maintain my student status, but I'm going to work on the startup. If it doesn't work out, I'll come back after a year and sit through the campus placement. And apart from that, we also have like a pre-incubator, we have a makers lab. So what is happening is we are getting a lot more startups coming out of IITM, and several of them are technology startups, right? So high technology startups, and I believe that it's a way to encourage people to look at more and more cutting edge, disruptive technologies and trying to get it out into the market.
Yeah, so maybe that will help bridge this gap here. Final round of insights, and to finish in few minutes for each of you. You can't, finish an AI conversation without talking China. Without talking China. There is a global, land grab happening. Now, my question to each one of you is, we touched upon two aspects of AI in India. One is the research agenda. The other is, we briefly discussed the applications, industry. He talked about retail applications. That now, in this global arms race or land grab for AI, what do you feel India's role, or what's the pole position you see India taking, if at all? And with these two things in mind, you want to have a go at first?
Sure. So, yeah. So one thing, from talking to me earlier, I have an opinion about everything, right? So yes. So in India, right, so we are, to face the truth, we are behind in the race, right? So we ceded significant ground because we are very slow to get our act together. And so at this point of time, we should look at things that challenges. It goes back to the point I was making earlier. Things that look at challenges that are unique to India. So for example, Partha would tell you about the challenges of doing multilinguality, right? So this is something which China doesn't face because, they had this cultural revolution which kind of homogenized language for them, right? So it's good for us in one way, so that they are not getting too much into the multilingual space. And that's something that we should look at addressing. And like that, figure out what is it that are India's challenges. For example, somebody was pointing out about, improving agriculture, right, in really low resource settings where there is real sparsity of water. And if you can come up with AI and say, like IoT-enabled technologies to address that, the next market is in Africa. Right? So it's not like we have to compete with the things that China and US are already doing really well and try to do better than them. But look at gaps in AI and technology where there is a significant global impact as well. Right? The globe doesn't end with China and the US. Right? So we should look at where else we can make a significant impact and try to focus our efforts there.
Partha, you want to go next?
So I guess kind of like if you look at like the landscape between China and India. Yeah. So, AI and machine learning and all of that. So that really can't drive if you don't have the data, right? So data is like the fuel of everything. So I guess there is kind of like a little bit of a difference between like who holds the data in these two countries. In China, it's predominantly companies of the form of like an Alibaba, Tencent and all who are kind of like holding on to this data. But in India, I think an interesting trend is happening because of all these India stacks, health stack and all. Where lots of interesting data is also going to end up in the possession of the government, right? So I think there also we have a tremendous opportunity in order to use AI and bring more broader societal benefits out of it by leveraging these kind of large data sets which are going to be collected, right? But at the same time, making sure bias, fairness, and privacy. Those are big important questions which with everyone else we also need to be looking at.
Chelliah, what role you see India playing in this global land grab for AI?
Yeah. So actually, probably I want to add a point about the entrepreneurial ventures you were asking Ravi about, and then I'll connect that with the India angle. What I see as success stories are deep tech startups like what I pointed out, a couple of acquisitions Flipkart made. They came from the ground up. It is very heartening to see IISc or IITs, Madras, Bombay, setting up research parks and then trying to found startups. But at least, maybe I need to polish my knowledge there. I have not seen huge exits yet. At the same time, many other established startups or companies, once you reach a critical mass, are you able to keep belting out such innovations? You can go all the way from Google. Most of these things have happened through acquisitions. So maybe there's an issue there. Somehow, established companies and academia should figure out how to belt out such big bets. I think that is in addition to universities doing their own entrepreneurial ventures. This way, they will probably save a lot on administration costs. Now, building on that, if I just keep the focus on online shopping, what can India do? Of course, these regional languages and tier 2 cities, bottom of the pyramid, speech to text, a lot of this, there's a huge potential. Maybe I'm just looking at the crystal ball, something like social commerce. It's not very India specific. Maybe if you go talk to your family, you may see that people still shop by word of mouth. And maybe some disruptor there could come from India. Maybe there are few things which are happening across the globe. This could be something along those lines. So I would look at this more from a enterprise or entrepreneurial angle. And of course, you have to solve problems for India, but you can also make good money and pass on the savings to customers.
Also, right? Make money by selling them to Flipkart, Walmart? Yeah?
I think the ultimate thing would be to make it a viable business. Okay. That's the...
You want to add something?
Yeah, so I want to add something to Partha's point. So yes, in India, a lot of data is owned by the government, but I'm increasingly seeing a willingness on the part of the government to explore ways in making this data available for both, not just for academic research, but the current government is really enamored with startups, right? So they're also willing to make this kind of access to data available for companies to build business models around, right? So, and I think this is one place where NASSCOM can really pitch in as well, right? Partnering with the government. There's willingness from the government point of view, but I'm not sure they know how to go about it. So that's where NASSCOM should pitch in and do this. So I think I'm very hopeful that we'll get this data out and into the hands of people who can do useful things with it.
Okay. So yeah, so we've tried to give you a sense of AI in India, especially through the research lens as well as applications, and also tried to attempt and answer India's role in this whole global land grab. I would like to open it for questions if you have any, and if you have, you want to direct them to any one of them in particular, please do. Okay.
One statement I wanted to make is, do we still know...
Question.
Statement followed by a question? Yeah. One statement I want to make is that, do we still know what an AI is? There's a common note that industries have been pushing intelligence towards a narrow intelligence, not an AI. So where are we in AI as a research?
Yeah, it's a very important question.
You want to take it?
Nothing artificial about it.
I think this question deserves your stature.
All right. I was actually telling you it's a low-hanging fruit to take on. But I'll tell you what my disappointment with the industry is. AI is becoming a marketing tool, right? So don't believe what the industry tells you is AI, right? So it's more often than not the case. It's not AI. So see, the goal of AI was originally to understand how humans solve problems and then solve problems that humans are good at solving. Not necessarily solve it like humans do, but solve problems that humans are good at solving. So if you look at it, that will become things like perception, right? And planning, reasoning, and decision making, right? So these are the problems that humans are good at solving, right? So we are very, very bad at pattern recognition. And a lot of modern, we can get fooled, right? We very easily think that the Earth, when the sun goes around the Earth, we are very bad at detecting patterns, right? So pattern recognition alone is not the original goal of AI, even though a lot of successful applications that now you see fielded as AI is all around pattern recognition, right? So I would say don't get hung up on terminology, right? Look at what your problem is, right? And see if a solution that goes currently by the cachet of AI can solve your problems, take it. So why are you worried whether it is AI or not AI? Sure, but then you don't build a. I agree. So the general. So it's no longer called AI. It's called artificial general intelligence. So the things that is not narrow, right? So AGI is a dream. It's a goal that we would like to achieve eventually. But that doesn't mean you have to wait for AGI before you start solving problems, right? So whatever techniques, technology you develop along the way, So for example, powdered orange drink, Tang, came out of trying to go to the moon. Right? So you shouldn't wait. You can't say, no, that is not going to the moon. I will not use that orange drink anymore. So like I said, take what is useful to you and use it in a better way. Don't get hung up on labels.
I think what he also means is look beyond pitch decks and cosmetic changes people make on LinkedIn profiles, calling themselves an AI engineer and so on. Any other question?
Professor Ravi, you mentioned that most of these startups, they kind of...
Can you speak loud?
Professor Ravi, you mentioned that most of these startups, they cater to the Western needs and hoping that they would kind of trickle down to India. What do you think is the reason, and is there a way to change this, or is it because mostly the funders are...
I actually told you the reason itself, right? So I don't think for many of the things that people are working on, there is a sustainable market in India yet, right? So they need the Western customers to pay for it. So that is the reason. So if you find things that where, see, not only is it needed for Indians, but you have a market here that makes it sustainable. I think the answers to that is all in economics and not in technology yet. So, I don't think that's the easy answer to that question. What will make it happen?
Thank you. You had a question? Yeah.
Just talk. There is no button. The button is there at the back. Just talk. Yeah.
Hi. My question is to Ravindran. Myself, Mohit, I graduated from IIT Chennai last year, and I am working on chatbots now. So my question is a little technical. To achieve higher accuracy in chatbots.
If it is technical, I would say let's take it offline.
Okay.
Sure.
Maybe.
Sorry about that. And we are still IIT Madras. We haven't changed our name.
Yeah, if there is no question, we can wrap it up, and thank you for your patience. Okay, last question.
Oops, that's a question.
You mentioned IIT Madras has relaxation on taking off a semester or a year. I think that's a very good initiative. Apart from that, do you see any need of following patterns like there was one very popular course offered at Stanford called CS231N by Karpathy. They allowed people to, not allowed, but they mandated people to do innovative projects at the end of the course to be able to qualify for the credits. So do you think there is any such, there are any such courses in IITs or IISc?
Yeah, I can maybe address a little bit
Sure.
there. Yes, yeah. So I'm in the Computational and Data Sciences department in IISc. And so everyone there, including our master students, do a significant thesis, which involves like a really big project component. And one of the things we have instituted is these fellowship programs, which are supported by the industry, where they pay the fellowship, and then like the student goes and spends 3 months during the first and second year in doing an internship in the company, and then they come back and continue working on that problem to kind of like finish off their thesis, right? So that work is done at the intersection of the student, the supporting industry, and the faculty in a mutually agreed problem statement. So I think that's kind of like one instance where students are working on significant projects that are of interest to industry, and we have found that to be like very supportive from industry. There are about like 10 different scholarships now from companies like Target, GE, and all of that.
Oh, right.
So we do have a very extensive innovation ecosystem in IIT Madras, right?
Yeah.
So we have a Center for Innovation. So where students can, it's like a maker's lab, students can propose innovative projects, there's a committee that evaluates it, and we even given some amount of funding for students to work on these. And students can take these projects for credits as well. And if they don't want to do it within the framework of their academic curriculum, that's also fine. They can do it free of, in their spare time. And then the most promising of these projects then are kind of encouraged to go into a pre-incubator stage, where we hook them up with mentors and also with investors and so on and so forth, where they can mature a business plan and then move into an incubation cell. And apart from that, very recently, we have a Gopalakrishnan Deshpande Center for Innovation, which runs an annual competition for innovative project ideas and innovative business ideas, and then again some amount of funding is given from them. And it's kind of a pre-incubator stage, and they also kind of connect them to their global network of mentors, and then encourage innovations there as well. And I have a red thing flashing, so I can talk to you more offline.
We deserve some prize for
thanks.
finishing
Thanks
in
a lot
time.
for your answers.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone, for patiently listening in and your questions. Thanks, everyone.